Janice Dean is joining me today. She's a senior meteorologist at Fox News and has been one of the leading voices in the efforts to hold New York Governor Andrew Cuomo accountable. Janice, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
On Tuesday, New York Attorney General Letitia James released a 165-page report detailing and showing that Governor Cuomo sexually harassed at least 11 women. He, quote, engaged in conduct constituting sexual harassment under federal and New York state law. And he also engaged in, quote, unwelcome and non-consensual touching, as well as making numerous offensive comments of a suggestive and sexual nature that created a hostile work environment for women. Now, it seems like since this report was released, the tide is rapidly turning against this governor. We have President Biden calling for his resignation, as well as other top Democrats, among other Republicans as well. But, the media has been covering it, rightfully so, as it should be. And something I want to get your thoughts on, though, is everyone's turning their back on him now, but when it comes to the nursing home scandal, it didn't seem to be the same reaction. Why do you think that was?
Well, listen, I have to first off say I'm so proud of the brave women that came forward. That's not easy to do, especially, the young women. I've had sexual harassment happen to me. Many of us have. And, to be someone who stands up for others and goes in and talks about this kind of abusive power of this governor. I mean, he's a monster. And I've heard from so many people, including lawmakers, that he's untouchable. So for them to, risk their careers, risk their reputations to do this, to come forward and talk about this absolutely disgusting behavior, I am so proud of all of them. I've always said it doesn't matter to me what finally puts the nail in his coffin. I'm sorry for such a term, but, my loved ones died in nursing homes, and we never got to have funerals or wakes for them. We never got to see them. And we didn't know about his March 25th order until it was too late. So I've always said I don't care what finally brings him down, but I do want people to remember that we've lost over 15,000 seniors in New York, and this governor covered up the numbers to sell his $5.1 million book. He's been trying to celebrate himself and profit off the pandemic for over a year now. And I've been speaking out since March of 2020. I know your readers and your viewers have been following the story. I'm grateful for that and, giving me a platform. So to finally have this be the thing that brings him down, I'm okay with it, as long as people don't forget. And the investigations here in New York, there are still investigations into the nursing home handling, his deadly order, and the fact that he covered up the numbers, as well as multiple scandals. Not only that, but COVID tests that he was giving out to his friends and family, including Chris Cuomo, as nursing homes could not get COVID tests to literally save lives. There's also his $5.1 million book, the fact that he wrote that and probably had state resources, his underlings helping him write it, using state resources. So listen, he has so many things he has to answer for, and I will continue to hold out hope that we will see some answers in the future.
Yes, absolutely. I want to talk about Chris Cuomo, but first, you talk about what will bring him down. Do you think this will bring him down? I mean, he's very much denying these allegations. He's continuing to hold his position that he didn't do anything wrong. He's saying that his kissing and his hugging, and it was meant to convey warmth. He talked about how his parents essentially taught him this. Do you think that impeachment seems likely? I know there's growing cause for it, but how likely is impeachment? And, it doesn't seem like he's going to resign. So that seems to be the next step.
I've talked to many lawmakers on both sides, and they have told me he has no way out. No way out. So he's either going to be impeached or he's going to resign. You're right. I don't think he's going to resign. He's going to, definitely, stay the course in his mind, because I really think in his mind, he feels he hasn't done anything wrong. And he's always blamed everyone else, and he's always had this woe is me attitude. He's the victim, which is incredible. I'd love for him to actually say that to our faces, victims' families, and actually the women that had to endure the sexual harassment from him. So that's his MO from the very beginning. Blame everybody else, feel sorry for himself. But I am very confident he's done.
That is great news, obviously, for you and for other people and other victims who had to endure, as you said, the 15,000 elders who died, the seniors who died last year and throughout the last year, I should say. I want to talk a little bit about Chris Cuomo now. On Tuesday, he was cited in the report as advising his brother with these sexual harassment allegations, how to address them. And then later that night, prime time, there he was on TV, on CNN, talking about not his brother's report, not the sexual harassment allegations, but COVID and his response and how governors are responding and the country's response. Do you have a message to the executives at CNN who allowed him to go on TV later that night and essentially, he completely ignored the story?
Malpractice, journalistic malpractice on their part. I have to say, though, I'm grateful for them being so spineless and lenient and having Chris Cuomo and his brother on for their daily comedy hour in the spring of last year, because if it wasn't for those giant Q-tips and the fact that they didn't care about what was going on in nursing homes, I would be here today. It was finally that last straw when I saw his brother on television with that giant cotton swab when nursing homes couldn't get COVID tests to, test incoming patients. That's when I decided to speak out. So I'm grateful for their journalistic malpractice. But when I look at, what's happened a year and a half later, and we find out that Chris Cuomo has been helping orchestrate behind the scenes, the governor's response to all of these harassment allegations, I mean, that's an ethical concern and maybe a criminal one. So they need to, think about what their messaging is. The fact that he had his brother on for so many weeks when the pandemic was happening, talking about his love life and the Love Gov and their family and who's better and whose meatballs are the better. I mean, it was beyond infuriating for people who had lost loved ones, right? But now when I see the fact that Chris Cuomo isn't delivering the biggest news story on every channel, the fact that one of the most powerful governors in America, a guy that could have been a president, a guy that was being considered for attorney general last year, Chris Cuomo's not covering that story because he can't. Give me a break. CNN, you are a joke, just like the Cuomo comedy hour last year.
Well, it's interesting because at the end of Chris Cuomo's show, when Don Lemon came on, they exchanged I love yous, actually. They said, "I love you, brother." And then as soon as Chris Cuomo got off the air, it was almost painful just knowing, that basically CNN had to return to their previously scheduled reporting on Andrew Cuomo's, the scandal of the day, the scandal of the week, the next couple of months, obviously. And, as soon as Chris Cuomo's face was off the screen, Don Lemon starts in with breaking news of Governor Cuomo's harassment report. So there's obviously been calls for the governor to resign. Do you think Chris Cuomo should step down from his position at CNN?
I think the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and they're going to dig their heels in, both of them. I don't think Chris Cuomo wants to step down. And there was a report out today recently that management actually gave him the option of taking, a sabbatical or a leave of absence while he was helping his brother during these allegations, these sexual harassment allegations. My goodness, if you're a female employee over at CNN and you have to work with Chris Cuomo, knowing that he was, actively trying to help save his brother and maybe even trying to retaliate around the women who were coming forward, that's awful for a female employee to have to look at him in the hallways. So yes, I do think he needs to step down. And I do think that CNN should probably fire him.
You know, you brought up how it would be for women working at CNN, obviously knowing that Chris Cuomo helped his brother address these allegations and basically tackle them. I mentioned this earlier, but Governor Cuomo in his response video to the report showed these images of him kissing men and women of all ages, right, to defend himself. And something that he said was, "I do it with everyone, black and white, young and old, straight, LGBTQ, powerful people, friends, strangers, people who I meet on the street." What message is he sending, and what was your reaction as you were watching this response video, specifically that part?
Well, the fact that, he had that at the ready, it was a produced video. It wasn't live. And you could tell because as he was, doing his speech that was previously written for him on a teleprompter, he was putting up all of these images of him kissing people young and old in the crowd, politicians. I found it very humorous that he put the Bill Clinton kiss picture in there. Someone he probably looks to as somebody who, denied until the very end. It was gross, but I mean, we've come to understand that this guy will stoop to all levels to try to control the narrative, to gaslight New Yorkers, and to try to keep himself out of trouble. But I actually think he looked more insane doing something like that than had he gone live and, tried to explain himself, But everything he does now can be used in a court of law against him. And if he keeps opening his mouth like this and doing stupid stuff like this, I think, he could go to jail.
Well, he has been pretty quiet, obviously, since that response video came out, aside from maybe tweeting, but I'm not necessarily sure that's him. He hasn't, to my knowledge, held any press briefings, hasn't come out publicly saying anything. So obviously over the next couple of days, we will be watching to see if he says anything, if maybe any other allegations arise, or if anything continues to develop with the nursing home scandal. I would love to have you back on to talk about that. My heart goes out to you and your family for having lost your in-laws last year. Janice Dean, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your reporting, because you're one of the few outlets that have stayed on this story from the very beginning and have not shied away from it. And, I'm grateful for that, because it's been really hard, climbing up a hill with not a whole lot of support, but you guys have been there and I'm grateful.